AV in your ears, that's Ambush Vid, giving you this audio visual down the most interesting street in the world. With my boy Steve, Fascination Street, you already know, let's get it. When you whip in the Fascination Street, what do you...
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's Carol Baskin, and you are listening to Fascination Street.
Yeah, AV in your ears, that's Ambush Vid, giving you this audio visual down the most interesting street in the world. With my boy Steve, Fascination Street, you already know, let's get it. When you whip in the Fascination Street, what do you...
Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with former senior assistant state's attorney for the great state of Maryland and legal thriller novelist A.X. Foster. In this episode, we get to know the early years of A.X.'s career, from growing up in New York with parents as writers to his stint in acting, which lasted several years, and then jumping into his time as an attorney. As I said, he was a senior assistant state's attorney for Maryland for 20 years, working on some crazy cases. And then eventually, he needed a new challenge, so he got out of the prosecution business and hung out his own shingle as a defense attorney. We talk about some of the differences in those two roles and some of the hurdles, as well as why he decided to do it. And then, naturally, we talk about his writing career. A.X.'s first book is called Gavel to Gavel. It is the first book in the Seneca County Courthouse series, which should have, at the very least, 3 books in the series. We talk about that first one and why he decided to do it, and then we talk about his newest book. It's called Double Blind. It is book number 2 in that series, and it is out now. Check out his website, axfoster.com, or Amazon. A.X. mentioned possibly an Amazon bundle of the first 2 books in the series, so make sure and check that stuff out. Follow him on the Instagrams and the Facebooks. And this is my conversation with 35-plus year veteran attorney and legal thriller author A.X. Foster.
Prepare to be fascinated. Prepare to be fascinated.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Alex Foster, A.X. Foster. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I cannot complain, my man. Getting ready for the holidays and all the busyness that entails. What I like to do, Alex, do I call you Alex, A.X.? What do you want me to call you throughout this
I think
thing?
AX is good. If someone wants to buy my books, they'll know where to look under A.X. Foster.
Okay. A.X., what I like to do to get started is I like to start from the beginning. It helps us understand how the guests got from where they were to where they are. So where were you born and raised, man? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on the west side of New York City, West 90th Street. I lived in New York, grew up on the 9th floor in an apartment building, and I stayed there until I went off to college. And now I live in the Washington, D.C. area, so life has been good to me.
So growing up, what did your parents do?
Both my parents were writers. My mom worked in the advertising industry for years and then wrote books. And my dad was the newspaper guy. He was the editor of a newspaper. So I grew up with words, books. We didn't have cell phones in those days. That's really the foundation for myself as a lawyer and as a writer.
What newspaper did your dad work for?
New York Times.
Just that? You said a newspaper, not the newspaper.
He was the editor of the Harvard Crimson in 1947, post-World War II. The Harvard Crimson, this is before television, so the newspaper was a big deal in those days, and then moved to New York.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you grew up with both of your parents writing, so writing was a big, huge thing in your household. What was the plan for you? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be one of 2 things. I wanted to be a shooting guard for the New York Knicks, and then I wanted to be a stage actor on Broadway. Unfortunately, I only grew to be 6'1", so my basketball career was not going to take me to Madison Square Garden. But Broadway was right around the corner, so I got a degree in theater, and I was going to be an actor. And in fact, I was a professional actor for 7 years in New York City prior to going to law school.
On stage?
I did some stage work, but I did primarily television. Probably 100 different episodes of 1970s and 80s soap operas. Ryan's Hope, One Life to Live, As the World Turns, Another World, and Search for Tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. You did all of those?
Yeah, I was all in those, but it was mostly an endless parade of delivery guys, bartenders, police officers. I had speaking roles, but I mainly trudged along doing extras and bit parts. But they paid a lot of money for a young 20-something-year-old guy in New York, so I was able to survive 7 years. I started to get disillusioned with all of that, and I went to law school to become a entertainment and sports lawyer. But when I got to law school, I got really fascinated with criminal law and the trial and the courtroom. It had a lot of similarities to theater in my mind. So I became a prosecutor of all things, and I ended up staying there for 20 years. Then I opened up my own law firm in the Washington, D.C. area. We got a lot of criminals around here. I've been doing that for the next 15 years. When COVID came along and the courthouse kind of shut down for a while, I decided to write the manuscript, the legal thriller I had always wanted to write. And I wrote it and then passed it around and got a very good reaction and was lucky enough to get it published. And now there it is. It's up on Amazon. That book is called Gavel to Gavel by A.X. Foster. And then I wrote my second book, and that's being launched, second book in the series in January. So I'm doing rounds of interviews and stuff for the second book launch.
Got you. Just to go back for a hot second. So you've been a lawyer, or you were a practicing attorney for 35 plus years?
That's right.
So that means that you were an attorney, a prosecutor in the state of Maryland while they were filming The Wire?
Yeah, The Wire is a Baltimore-based series in the 90s. So, yeah, I became a prosecutor in 1989. So, yeah, that probably would have overlapped.
Okay, so I know you can't speak to the truthfulness of The Wire, but during that time that you were practicing as a prosecutor, was it a lot of drug and gang stuff that you were prosecuting, or were you doing like everything?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you become a brand new prosecutor, you're in the lower level misdemeanor court or even traffic court. And then you do hundreds and hundreds of drunk driving cases and car crashes and stuff like that. And then when you get to misdemeanor court, you do hundreds of fist fights, shoplifting, arguments, drug deals. Back when I started, marijuana was still against the law. Luckily, or thank God, Maryland now has legitimized and legalized possession of marijuana. But back when I started, people used to get locked up for smoking a joint. But that was in the lower level misdemeanor court. If you do well in the lower court, then you get promoted to the higher level court, which in Maryland is called the circuit court. That's when you have jury trials. And then you start doing some serious stuff like shooting, stabbing, big drug deals, white collar crime. And then if you're really good, you move higher. And I started doing murder trials, homicide cases. I did a lot of sexual assault cases and child abuse cases. And that was the focus for many years. Then I became more of a senior guy in the office, and I only did a few cases a year, but they were the real big ones. Like, I did one death penalty case, for example. And then I felt like I was starting to repeat myself and do case after case after case. I mean, 100 jury trials is a lot of work. And then I opened up my own law firm. So it's kind of like playing chess with the white pieces for 20 years and then playing chess with the black pieces. It's the same game, but from a completely opposite perspective.
I don't know if you're familiar with the television program, The Lincoln Lawyer.
Yeah, well, the movie with Matthew McConaughey, and it's a Connolly piece. The Lincoln Lawyer movie, I haven't seen the TV show based on that, but the original movie with Matthew McConaughey has actually got some realistic scenes in it. I mean, most of the TV shows and movies are crazily unrealistic, like Law and Order, they solve a case in 30 minutes. But there are certain scenes in The Lincoln Lawyer, and it's interesting you pulled that out of a hat, that I thought were pretty realistic, particularly the questioning of some of the witnesses in the middle of the movie. Mostly they're not accurate, but you don't expect them to be accurate. It's a movie. There's some stuff that happens in my books that don't really happen a lot in the courtroom. but it would be boring as hell if you just went to some ordinary case. So, yeah, that's the drama of it. That's the fictionalization of it. And yeah, Lincoln Lawyer I thought was pretty good if you're going to bring up movies that have a legal theme.
Well, if you like the movie, then you'll probably enjoy the television series. There's 3 seasons it's on Netflix. It's pretty sick. My wife and I just finished watching season 3 like 2 days ago. That's why I brought it up.
Cool.
So, in all of your time as a prosecutor, what are some of the bigger cases, not names or anything like that, but what are some of the bigger cases that stood out or stand out in your memory? Like the ones that you just like you're going to carry with you forever.
Okay. Well, I could tell you the names. I won't, but they're all a matter of public record. But I mentioned my work in animal cruelty, and those the very thin, narrow, niche subset of criminal law. But when I was a young prosecutor, I had a case where a bunch of kids thought it would be funny to shoot some farmer's cow and kill it as a prank or whatever. And everyone was kind of laughing about it. Even the judge was chuckling about it. And I was really incensed. I thought it was horrible that somebody would do that. It was very antisocial, red flag kind of behavior. And to my dismay, I found out that there was no felony animal cruelty law in Maryland. We were one of 3 states, I think New Mexico and Louisiana, I might be wrong, but it was only 3 states in America that did not have a felony animal cruelty law. And I went to my boss and said, I just did this case with this cow that got shot and killed, and everyone was joking about it. I think that's really wrong. And he said, do something about it. So we went to Annapolis, the state capital, and enacted a felony animal cruelty law in the year 2000. So it's been almost 25 years. And then I was the first prosecutor in Maryland to prosecute a case under the new felony and achieved a conviction. I got an award from the Humane Society and all of that. So I started doing a lot of animal cruelty cases and talking to other prosecutors around the country about dog fighting and cockfighting and very nasty, ugly things. But honestly, those cases help to protect animals in Maryland. And I'm very proud that when I retire as an attorney, I will leave that behind. So that would be a type of case I'm real proud about.
So in that bill that you enacted or you helped to get enacted, what makes it a felony versus a misdemeanor?
Well, there are certain things that elevate it from a misdemeanor. I mean, you do have a misdemeanor and also an option to go with felony. And that some of the factors might be killing an animal, or if you injure a police canine, that's one of the aggravating factors that elevates it. And there are others that if you cause pain and suffering to an animal, there are certain types of a fact constellation that would allow a prosecutor to file for a felony and misdemeanor. And I've done cases with dogs, cats, horses, equine law, all kinds of animals. And attitudes towards animals are very, very broad. I mean, some people hunt deer and birds and game fowl, and they're like, why would you prosecute someone for killing a turkey? I do that, So you have to work with legitimate goals as well as illegitimate ones. But where people are torturing animals and doing crazy, mean things, I think that's super dangerous behavior that is a red flag to future criminal behavior. So we take that real seriously.
Why was it so important for you to help get legislation passed that made it a felony? Why wasn't misdemeanor good enough? Does that make sense?
There was something about it that just didn't sit right with me. I mean, to go shoot a neighboring farmer's cow as a prank or as a joke, and then to have it be treated as like a property crime, like the animal was just a property. The value of the cow would be restitution without any thought to like, this is sick. I mean, anyone that would do that and take pleasure in harming an animal is someone who could be potentially very dangerous. I've read a lot of studies. Most serial killers, the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world and John Wayne Gacy and, those type sadistic killers often participate in animal cruelty in the beginning. Now, not everyone who does animal cruelty goes on to be a serial killer, but the reverse is pretty statistically true. Every serial killer has experimented with animal abuse. And so I think there's a real link between hurting an animal, torturing an animal, and just going on to be like a real problem for us, our society. So that's why it's important. It's important that it be treated seriously and not just laughed off like you stole a hubcap or you flattened someone's tire. It's not a property crime. It's a crime against a living animal. And I thought it was serious when I did it. And that was 25 years ago. And I haven't changed my opinion on that.
Well, I agree. That is a slippery slope for sure.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Pull up a chair, make a pallet, or take a knee and tune in to Landon Talks with Kate, a conversational podcast blending humor, southern charm, and insightful discussions. We'll sip on some sweet tea and deep dive into topics ranging from caftans to collard greens, from art and literature to health and wellness, to internet trends and entertainment, and so much more. Expect listener questions, personal stories, and exciting special guests. Perfect for those of y'all who love to chat and learn something new every week. It'll be a relaxing, good time full of laughs and a lot of heart. Y'all come hang out with us everywhere podcasts are found.
Let's get back into it.
Why did you decide to chuck it as a prosecutor and pick up the black piece or the white piece of the chessboard? Whichever one. I don't remember which one is the good guys.
Well, the good guys probably got the white hat on and the bad guys probably got the black hat. So I'll stick with those colors. Well, 20 years as a prosecutor is a long time. I did, as I said, over 100 jury trials. I felt like I had done everything that you could do. And then you also have to deal with the office politics, you know, the ambitious competitors within the office, dealing with, quote, supervisors. And you're caught in this machinery of the government, like a big suburban prosecutor's office with 80 prosecutors. I mean, that's the kind of office that I worked in. And I really loved being a prosecutor, but I felt like I wanted some freedom. And when I opened my own law firm, I was my own boss. I had the best boss in the world, me. And I took the cases I wanted and I declined the cases. I've never defended an animal cruelty case, for example. And I took the cases and the clients that I wanted, and I had a lot more freedom. So being a prosecutor, I tended to win a lot of my cases because if it was a bad case or a weak case or a flawed case, I would work out a plea or even drop it. As a defense attorney, someone is charged with murder or rape or, you know, bank robbery, and they have all this evidence. You know, you're like playing poker with a very weak hand. Someone once said, like, you know, an idiot with 4 aces will beat a genius with none. So being a defense attorney is much harder in terms of winning, but there are different ways to win. If you keep your client from going to jail, that's a win. Or if you get your client convicted of misdemeanors instead of felonies, that's a win. I mean, I had a guy who was sentenced to 27 years in jail. That was a win because he was looking at a mandatory life sentence. So it's a very strange world on the defense side, but I liked being in charge of my own stuff. And of course, you get paid very handsomely if you're representing wealthy clients or wealthy clients' children or something like that. So I got 4 kids that all graduated from college. All that tuition is paid off.
You mentioned some of the styles of cases you took on as a defense attorney. Why did you take the big ones? You know, you were mentioning murder and bank robbery and things like that. Well, why didn't you go with the smaller criminals? I mean, that sounds so hard.
Actually, you always want to do a blend. And here's a good way to think of it. You can eat fish. You can eat a whale or you can eat a guppy. You just got to eat a whole lot more guppies to equal a whale. So I would do a big case, a murder trial or a rape trial. And you charge a lot of money, but it requires a lot of work. And then you could do 10 drunk driving cases, defend 10 people of drunk driving, which are pretty simple, don't require as much work, but they don't pay as much. So you try to do a blend of small, medium, and large cases. If you just do whales, you get overwhelmed. If you just do guppies, you don't get enough to eat. So I try to always do a blend, to have something big going on and then go over to the courthouse and knock out a couple of simple cases too. And that just keeps the revenue flowing in. It keeps the business healthy and it keeps me interested. If I had to do another drunk driving case, I mean, I'm bored with those. I need a more interesting puzzle to solve. But if I have all these crazy murders, then I don't sleep and, it becomes too much. So a blend is the best way, I think.
That makes sense. Let's talk about your writing. So you grew up with both your parents being writers. When did you put out your first book, Gavel to Gavel?
Okay, so let's say COVID reached its height somewhere around 2020. I started writing, and then it took me a year to write. And then I got my book published, my first book published in 2023. And the book did well, and they inspired me to write a follow-up. And I did. And so I wrote Double Blind. That's number 2 in the series. And that took about a year. And now we're ready to go. It's going to be up on Amazon, the 2 books, and they're going to try and market them as a digital box set. I'm already working on the 3rd one. I'm sketching it out. It's going to have a very intricate murder plot. And I want to have 3 books in the series at least. But I think of it like the Hardy Boys. I mean, I could do 15 if people want to buy them, So I've got 2 done. I've got a 3rd that I'm shaping up. And then I have some other ideas too. So as I retire from the courtroom, I'm going to shift to a retirement career of writing my books.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, the book that he has coming out in January is called Double Blind. It is number 2 in the Seneca County Courthouse series. Again, it's a legal thriller. And the first one was called Gavel to Gavel. Why did it take you so long to write your first book?
Well, I actually don't know if that's too long. Everyone writes at a pace. I've heard of authors who take 10 years to write a book, and I've heard of other authors that spin them out in a month.
I guess what I mean is, why did it take you so long to start writing, I guess? You know what I mean? Like, you grew up with 2 writers in the house, and then you went off to become an attorney, and you waited until COVID to be like, hey, you know what? I got a book in me. Why didn't you do it sooner?
Well, I was a little bit busy. I was working my way up in the prosecutor's office, trying very serious cases, and got a big family and just never really had the time. I always had in my mind, like, I could write a book that's a John Grisham style book. I love reading those, and I'm a good writer. I could do it. But finding the time to sit down and actually do it, that took the right opportunity. But when COVID came along, I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I just sat down and started writing out the story. And when I had my first draft, I showed it to some lawyer friends of mine and to a couple of judges, and I sent it around. And some people had some really good suggestions, and that required rewriting. And it just took a while to get it down. But I don't think of that year as particularly long. I mean, it's a 480-page book, 76 chapters, short chapters, each one about 5 or 6 pages. And I would write a chapter a day, maybe, and then go back and revise it. So it took a while, but the second book went much faster because I kind of had an idea what I was doing. I had a good lead character, my protagonist, Mac McIntyre. And the second book went easier than the first. I'm a better writer now, I think, having gone through all of that.
Sure, the second $1 million is always easier to make, they say.
Let's hope it's 1 million from your mouth to God's ear.
I don't think that whatever the year or whatever that it took you to write Gavel to Gavel, I didn't mean to imply that that was a long time. I was just talking about, why did you wait until almost retiring? Not retiring, but you're well into your other career before you started that one. That's all. And you answered that. So thank you. So you said that this is the second one. Hopefully there'll be at least 3, but you did say that you would keep writing them as long as people keep reading them. Do you have that many books in you? Do you have that much story to tell?
Well, it's crazy. When I sit back and like, what case is next? I look back at the cases that I handled in my career, and I handled quite a few bizarre, crazy. I did one death penalty qualified case. And then I know of others. I mean, the beautiful thing about fiction is you can just make it up. I use the authenticity of my own experience as a prosecutor, and I try to cover a lot of legal procedures in my books that other authors don't. like motions practice. I have a DNA report in Gavel to Gavel. I do ballistics. I do fingerprinting. I mean, I know a lot about all these different things. I write about what I know. The readers, they become like a juror. They listen to the facts and the evidence and the testimony, and they try to see which way they'll cast their vote, guilty or not guilty. So I try to make little puzzles and put clues in there. And, I want to make it fun. I'm under no illusion that I'm writing some Pulitzer Prize winning piece of literature. These are fun books that you read on a flight or at the beach, and you enjoy the story. And for me, when readers say, "Oh, I really loved your book. I stayed up all night. I had to find out, like, was she guilty or not guilty?" To me, that's the biggest kick. We talk about making money and being, well known and all that. That stuff doesn't really drive me. What drives me is telling a good story and having readers say, "Man, I really enjoyed that. When's the next one? I can't wait." And so that's why I do it.
Now, you sort of said, and I read in some notes here that you kind of take the reader on a journey where they're almost like, it's like they've been selected for a jury. How accurate is that statement? Do you feel like you wrote it in a way that would get the reader to feel like they're part of the book, or are they just reading along?
Like you said, I want to involve the readers in give them some skin in the game. So the book is set up in a chronological format from gavel to gavel, beginning to end. And it starts with a murder. Then it goes into the CSI, the investigation. The prosecutor and his detective figure out what happened. And then they charge a woman with murdering her husband. And then they interview the witnesses and pick a jury. Then they have motions practice, which a lot of people don't really understand what happens before a trial. Then a jury is picked. Then witnesses are called to testify. And all the way through the whole process, all the way down to the judge gives jury instructions and the jurors meet and they render a verdict. And so as the reader is reading along, the reader's like, "I think she's guilty. Oh no, I think she's not guilty." Or, "I think that witness is lying," and so forth. And so hopefully the reader gets involved in it as well and has their own thoughts. They either agree or disagree with the verdict that I have in my story.
So you do cover all that stuff? You cover jury selection and some of the motions and things like that?
Absolutely. People are really interested in jury selection. Some people get called for jury duty and other people have never been called. But I've picked 100 juries, and I know about how that process of voir dire takes place, trying to guess which jurors will be favorable to your side and having to make stereotypic judgments of the way people are dressed or all the different issues. Are they Black? Are they white? Are they Hispanic? Are they men? Are they women? Are they rich? Are they poor? Are they educated? Are they uneducated? Do they have a job that requires precision, like accounting? Or do they have more of a free-form occupation, like an artist? So you take all those factors, and then you have this complex game of jury selection with peremptory strikes and strikes for cause. It's like blackjack almost. So I take the readers in 2 chapters through the selection of the jurors because people are really into that. And a lot of my reviews and feedback have been like, "That was really cool how you discussed what the prosecutor is thinking as he's picking jurors and throwing jurors off." So yeah, I have a whole section of the early part of the book where the jury is picked.
That is super fascinating. That is a really important part of the whole process. But, like you said, TVs and movies and things like that don't really cover voir dire a lot. Several years ago, I guess it's a little more than a decade now, I fought a traffic ticket. It wasn't speeding. It was a weird traffic violation. And I represented myself, and I got to pick a jury myself. And that was one of the wildest things ever. I mean, you have all your legal knowledge. I had zero. And so the judge kept having to tell me what I was allowed to do, what I was allowed to ask, what I was allowed to say. And it was all super, super fascinating to learn all that stuff and then to actually do it. So it's good to hear that you have included that, which like I said, we don't really see a lot of in popular culture, the behind the scenes of it.
I hope you got a not guilty verdict.
I did.
Yeah, man.
They say I won, but I was like, did I win? Like, I took a whole day off of work. I lost that money. I like, this is all my time. Like, whatever. But I just wish that I would have gotten like the transcript so that I could print it just for myself.
Yeah, sounds like a cool experience.
It was a lot of fun.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Karen Silkwood had a purpose. She was headed to a crucial meeting that would blow the whistle on the billion-dollar nuclear corporation she worked for. Instead, she died in a concrete culvert on a dark, desolate stretch of highway just outside of Crescent, Oklahoma. To discredit her, authorities and the institution Karen sought to expose called her nothing more than an emotionally disturbed and sexually promiscuous drug abuser. But in her death, she became a martyr for feminism, environmentalism, and pro-labor movements. From the creators of Gone Cold, Texas True Crime comes Silkwood, a story that remains one of the most explosive conspiracies in 20th century America and became the inspiration for a critically acclaimed movie. Silkwood dives deep into 28-year-old whistleblower Karen Silkwood, her relentless fight for truth, and the chilling events that followed. Betrayal, danger, and a mysterious unsolved death that still haunts the nation 5 decades later. Seeking justice, Karen went up against a corporate Goliath and paid the ultimate price. With no known witnesses, what happened to Karen Silkwood on that cold November night? Was it an accident? Was she silenced for knowing too much? Or something far more sinister? In a world where profits are placed above safety, Silkwood takes you inside a gripping true tale of corporate greed, government cover-ups, and the deadly secrets inside a nuclear industry titan. Don't miss this eye-opening journey into one of the most powerful stories of our time. Find Silkwood on your favorite podcast platform and hit that subscribe button now. Some secrets are too dangerous to stay hidden.
Let's get back into it.
Okay. I asked you why you waited so long to become an author, but why did you write it? I know you said you always felt like you had stories to tell, but what made you actually do it? Besides COVID and the time, what made you actually pull the trigger and have the confidence to just write a whole novel? Where did you get that confidence from?
I don't know if I felt confident. I felt like, hey, let's do it. I got the time. I'm a really super type A kind of person, and I don't like to sit around and do nothing. And I'm not the kind of guy that goes sunbathing and lying on the sand on a beach somewhere. I like to do stuff. And I was like, hey, you're never going to have a better opportunity. You've been putting this off forever. Just sit down and see where you go. And so I wrote a chapter and I wrote another chapter. And when I had about 100 pages, I showed it to some people and they were like, this is really pretty good. I didn't know you could write. And I'm like, well, let's keep going. And so some days I would write 50 pages and then weeks I wouldn't write at all. But I just threw myself into it and I did it. I never knew it would get published, but it did. And then it started taking on a life of its own.
Who's this book for? Who's the audience?
Anyone that's interested in legal thrillers, if you like John Grisham or James Patterson, if you like the TV show Law and Order, that's my audience. People are interested in trials. I mean, they have whole TV channels, Court TV, devoted to courtroom. You can't go a week in America without some new crazy case. We got this guy in New York who shot the CEO of the healthcare company, Luigi. And then you have the girl in Wisconsin that shot up her school. And I mean, this is America. There'll be some crazy killing next week. And people are cultured here to think of trials, and they're everywhere. So I have a built-in audience of people that like trials. Mine is the legal thriller for those people that really want an authentic view of what a prosecutor in a prosecutor's office, what that guy's perspective is. I deal with the office politics and people who want to become judges and the ambitious. I mean, they're very, very uptight, ambitious people that work in a prosecutor's office. It's very hard to get a job like that. It's super competitive at a law school. And so you put all these people in a little box and they start eating each other up. I wanted to cover that aspect of what it's like to be a prosecutor as well. So those are some of the themes. But people who are interested in courtroom would be interested in Gavel to Gavel and Double Blind.
Are the two books connected with a through line other than the location and the main character?
There are a couple. There's several characters that reappear in book 2. The lead detective who works with Mac McIntyre as like in a team. The lead detective, Andre, is in book 2. I have a little romance section in there. He's got a girl who works at the public defender's office. So there's a little steamy office encounter in book 2. I have a different judge and a different defense attorney and a different case, a different murder. His obnoxious boss is the same. So some characters travel from book 1 to book 2, and then book 2 introduces some new ones. Similar to the Hardy Boys. You know who the Hardy Boys are. You know the small town, but they have a different mystery with each book.
Gotcha. Is there an audiobook version of Gavel to Gavel, and will there?
There is not. We have discussed doing that. It's expensive. Honestly, I would want to be the one who does the voiceover. On my Facebook page, I do some readings from the book, and there's an actor who has chosen to do a reading. So maybe someday we will do that. But right now, if I'm going to authorize that, I would want to be in control of that rather than just say do it, because I have in my mind a sound that I would want it to be. But it does lend itself to audio because a lot of it is dialogue between, a lawyer and a witness and a judge. And the courtroom scenes all lend themselves to a stage kind of feel because it's all question and answer as you would have in a courtroom.
Gotcha. Is there a website? Is there axfoster.com?
Yes, there sure is. It's axfoster.com. To your listeners, if you just put AX Foster in your search bar on Google, it'll pop up my website, my Facebook page. I welcome anyone who wants to follow the page, become friends on Facebook. That's AX Foster-author. I have an Instagram, all that social media stuff. So go to my website and you can link on to all of that. And also go to Amazon and just put AX Foster or Gavel to Gavel and my book will pop right up. Facebook, Instagram, working on a new Twitter page. Yeah, all that stuff.
Do you do dances on TikTok?
We did a little something on Book Talk, but we haven't gone back there. All of that stuff is, everyone looks at their phone now. So I'm getting help with all that. I confess I'm not the world's best, with computers and things, but yep, we're trying to get as out there as we can.
That's kick-ass. Again, everybody, the second book out in January 2025 is called Double Blind. It is the second book in the Seneca County Courthouse series. Book 1 is Gavel to Gavel, and that has been out for roughly a year and a half. Do they have to read the first one in order to enjoy the second one?
Oh, that's a great question, Steve. No. Each book is standalone. Oh, you can pick up book 2. In the back of book 2, I have the first chapter of book 1. And in the back of book 1, I have the first chapter of book 2. So you can get a little flavor. But no, you can read them in either order. You can go book 1 to book 2 or book 2 to book 1, similar to like Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys. You can take out book 20 and just read it. But like I said, we're going to market them as a digital box set. So hopefully people will buy them both as a pair. And then when my book 3 is done, it'll be a trilogy.
Can't wait. AX, as we're heading out here, is there anything that I didn't ask you or we didn't talk about specifically that you wanted to talk about today?
I enjoyed talking with you. I think we covered a lot of stuff. You're the first interviewer that's really gone over my early days. And so I enjoyed doing that. I would just say, if someone's looking for a fun read and they're interested in courtroom stuff, I would welcome making the acquaintance of any new reader or someone in the publishing industry who's interested. So I'm happy to open a dialogue with all people, and please contact me.
Fantastic. Everybody go check out those two books that I mentioned, Gavel to Gavel and the new one, Double Blind. Like you said, they're on his website, axfoster.com, and on Amazon. Man, AX, dude, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day on your hectic writing legal thriller schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great fun. Thank you very much for inviting me.
100% my pleasure, and you have a great holiday season, man.
You too. Thanks, Steve.
And good luck on the new book launch, too, by the way.
Thanks, brother.
All right. Bye, buddy.
Bye.
Opening music is the song FSP Theme, written, performed, and provided by Ambush Vin.
Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jax Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.